Electoral officials say there was an overwhelming voter turnout in Bulawayo, traditionally an opposition stronghold. As CGTN's Vauldi Carelse reports, people stood in long queues to vote for change.
The dawn of an election day like no other in Zimbabwe. The first without long-time leader Robert Mugabe on the ballot. The first election, people here say, without fear or intimidation. The first where the outcome cannot be predicted. Voting got off to a slow start, with officials taking time to explain the process to those who might be unfamiliar with it. Young and old showed up, and some came prepared to just wait it out. But even the long queues could not dampen the excitement.
I was so excited. I'm still very excited. I hope things will change and we get a better living.
But right now, I think I also want to own the land and be able to produce. That's the reason why I voted today.
I want to build a new Zimbabwe.
We want a real change in Zimbabwe. We are tired of this old government. We want a real change. We absolutely want a real change. A president, we need somebody who leads us, not a ruler.
I voted today because it's our constitutional right to vote, and we can't complain after that if we haven't voted. So we've got to be part of voting.
And I'm just glad that I'm here to see what happens, because I won't be here for too much longer.
Among the thousands who came out to vote in Bulawayo was presidential hopeful and opposition party leader Thokozani Kupe. She said this election is not just a two-man race.
So the fact that I'm here, it is clear that it's not a two-man's race. It is for everybody else. We've got 23 candidates, and I'm one of those candidates. The ballot is going to say who is contesting in this election and who is going to win in this election. For now, it's immature for people to start, saying who has won and who has not won. So let's wait for the last person to cast their vote and for counting to begin. That's the only time we will know on who is going to win this election. But like I said, I'm in it to win it.
The Electoral Commission says the sheer number of candidates on the ballots could be the reason why voting is taking so long.
We used to have on average 5 to 10 candidates. Now you find there are over 20 candidates. So for someone who is not very fast, it takes time for him or her to identify as a candidate to vote for.
The polls won't close until the last people in the queue have made their mark. The thousands who have come out to vote here in Bulawayo are placing their hopes for a change in the ballot. They're hoping that the outcome of these historic elections will reflect the will of ordinary people. And mostly they're hoping that the vote will herald a new era, a new Zimbabwe. Vauldi Carelse, CGTN, Bulawayo, Zimbabwe.
Well, let's get you the latest on the ground from our CGTN correspondents Vauldi Carelse, who's in Bulawayo, as you saw there, and Farai Mwakatuya, who is in the capital, Harare. Let's start with you, Vauldi, in Bulawayo. This is where political tensions ran high after a bomb blast during the president's campaign rally. Give us an idea of the mood in Bulawayo after that incident.
0021.
Well, Karen, I do think that in the package that just played, you could get a sense of the excitement that many voters felt today. Many of them braved what was very, very long queues in Bulawayo. In fact, as I speak to you now, the presiding officer here at Milton High School, where we are one of the 428 polling stations in Bulawayo, just called closing time. He made the policemen check if there were any more voters out in the queue before he started briefing party officials. Those are the only people left. And we are hearing some reports that there are still some queues around the city that's in the 12 districts here, but those are expected to, as I said, carry on voting. The polls will only close once the last people in those queues have been afforded the opportunity to cast their ballot. I'll maybe give you a sense of the overwhelming turnout, as the Electoral Commission has said here in Bulawayo, by using Milton High School as an example. There are just over 800 registered registered voters. According to the statistics here, 700 people showed up. They had to turn away a number of people because they showed up at the wrong polling station. They were then directed to where they were registered. But that's 700 people who voted just at this polling station, and that's just an example of what's happened across Bulawayo today. As you said earlier, Karen, it is traditionally an opposition stronghold, and certainly the sense I got from talking to many, many people on the ground throughout the course of the day was that people are really hoping that change will happen at the top.
Okay, thank you, Vauldi. So high turnout there. Fry, let's go over to you now. You're in the capital, Harare, and that has seen some protests ahead of the elections. What was your observation of today's voting?
Well, Karen, today the process went smoothly, bar a few hitches. I think the similar sort of challenges that Vauldi was talking about in Bulawayo, massive turnout, and this new biometric registration system is a different kind of verification than what was used before. It's a bit longer, and so because of that, there were some delays experienced, particularly at the polling stations in high-density suburbs where there was massive turnout, and particularly in the morning. So that issue of delays was a challenge here, but otherwise everything did go smoothly. The EU head of delegation, the observer mission from the EU, we had an opportunity to speak to him later in the day, and he said he'd visited a number of polling stations, seen those similar sort of problems, heard of other isolated cases, bribery, intimidation, those sort of things, but largely not things that these are things that they're going to look into to see if they were systematic or a pattern. But at this stage, he was very encouraged by the massive turnout, encouraged by the fact that people came out and wanted to express their opinions, and even the opposition itself has hailed the political tolerance and the political maturity of Zimbabweans in terms of going about this vote in a peaceful manner without much incident, and that determination to vote. So people who were, despite those delays, people said we're not leaving these polling stations until we've made our mark.
And Fry, what's the latest on the ZEC's court bid against opposition leader Nelson Chamisa?
Well, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission has lodged a report with the Zimbabwe Republic Police regarding the presidential candidate for the MDC Alliance, Nelson Chamisa. Earlier today, they then updated that there are two presidential candidates whom they've reported to the police, and they didn't name them, but we expect that the other one would be President Emmerson Mnangagwa, because he also issued a statement last night when the campaigning had officially ended, where he was responding to remarks made by former President Robert Mugabe. So two presidential candidates have been reported to the police, and the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission says, look, it doesn't have investigative powers, so it's handed over these reports to the police, and the police will now need to determine if indeed there's been any violation of the electoral code and the electoral laws. So as it stands, we'll wait to hear the police in terms of their determination if indeed there's been a breach, and from there which route they'll take in terms of going after the people who've breached the law.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Farai. That was Farai Wakatuya in the capital, Harare. Well, let's wrap it up with you, Vauldi, in Bulawayo. As the shift slowly moves to vote counting, what have people there told you about their reasons for voting? What do they think of an election without Mugabe?
Well, Karen, it's been quite an interesting day in that former President Robert Mugabe's name really wasn't mentioned by many of the people I spoke to. There was, however, an elderly lady. She was about 81 years old, Amanda. She's a teacher. She was born here in Zimbabwe, and she said to me, you know, I'm here to come and vote for change, and I'd really like to witness change because I won't be around for much longer. Particularly here at Milton Hall, there really was a lot of elderly people, and that's something that I did notice. While everyone was saying that Chamisa has lots of support among younger voters, I think that it shouldn't be underestimated that he would have a lot of support among the elderly as well. Commentators, political analysts suggesting that maybe Mugabe throwing his weight around Chamisa might have damaged his chances a little bit. That remains to be seen as vote counting as vote counting gets underway here now. But I generally think that the sense we were getting from people on the ground was that their reasons were varied, and certainly Mugabe wasn't mentioned by any of the people I spoke to. Maybe it's a different scene up where Farai is in Harare, but a lot of people were just focusing on the fact that for them this was a chance, a clean slate, something they'd never seen so many presidential candidates on the ballot, just really a demonstration of what democracy really should be, as Farai mentioned, that political maturity, and Zimbabweans really coming out to show that they can exercise their constitutional right to vote.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That was Vauldi Carelse there in Bulawayo, and earlier, of course, we spoke to Farai Mwakatuya in the capital, Harare, on this day, Zimbabwe's landmark election day.